In this video, we're going to build a 100% local AI agent in Go. Hi, I'm Zinda, and this is What the Fun. Go and local AI used to be a disaster. The whole inference ecosystem was basically Python only. If you wanted to use something like Llama.cpp using Go, you needed to use CGo Bindings. And depending on what you're building, that could be a pretty painful experience. So in this video, we're going to be using a slightly different method that has no dependency on CGo. And it allows you to hook into Llama.cpp to run your AI models locally. Before we get into that, if you're new around here, on What the Funk, we talk about AI, coding, and building real things with Go. If that's your kind of content, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification icon so you can stay up to date whenever I post a new video. With that out of the way, let's get into it. So like I mentioned before, we can use CGo to hook into different things like Llama.cpp. But what's the problem with that? The Go debugger can't cross the Go-C boundary. So you can't look into what's going on with the C code that you're looking into. Also, if you want to cross-compile to different platforms like Mac, Windows, etc., you're going to need a C toolchain for every environment that you're using CGo for. Also, if you're trying to bind to something like Llama.cpp, you're going to have a hard time because that code base moves pretty fast, and keeping up to date with the latest and greatest is going to take a lot of effort. So rather than deal with all these headaches, a lot of Go developers just simply develop with cloud providers in mind and skip the whole local thing altogether. Now, to solve this headache, a library called Pure Go was created. It allows you to hook into other libraries using Go's built-in FFI, or foreign function interface. So rather than compile against C libraries directly, Go can actually reach out to these C libraries and call those directly. Seeing how powerful that was, a group called Hybrid Group created Yzma, which allows you to bind to Llama.cpp directly using Pure Go. So now you don't need a C compiler, no CGo headaches. You can just build and it works. And that's one breakthrough that's unlocked this entire stack we're going to use in our agent today. So what stack are we going to be using? We're going to be using Fantasy by Charm Bracelet, which gives you a unified agent API. It allows you to define tools, set a system prompt, call generate or stream, and basically allows you to easily create AI agents with almost any provider you choose. Next, we're going to use a library called Kronk, which handles the downloading of different models to your local machine and then running the inference. Finally, Yzma, which I mentioned before, is the foundation. It uses the Go FFI to Llama.cpp and then allows you to run this model locally on your local hardware. So when you first run this application, it's going to download everything automatically. There's not going to be an installation step, no make file. It just runs. So each layer does exactly one thing. Fantasy handles the agent logic, Kronk manages the models, Yzma does the FFI, the talking directly to Llama.cpp, and that's it. You can simply run Go run, everything downloads automatically, and just works. So what exactly are we going to be building? We're going to be building a local AI Dungeon Master. If you've never played D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, it's a tabletop role-playing game where one person, the Dungeon Master, narrates the story and runs the whole game while players make choices. We're going to be using the 5th edition or 5e, which is basically the latest rule set for Dungeons and Dragons. I'm no Dungeons and Dragons expert myself, so if I got any of that wrong, just let me know in the comments. So we're going to be building a local AI Dungeon Master, and we're going to be using the Qwen 3 8 billion parameter quantized model. This model is going to be about 6 gigabytes. It's going to download on its first run, and we're going to build 4 tools for it. These 4 tools are going to be the Ask Player tool, Lookup Monster tool, Lookup Spell, and Roll Dice. So with these tools, we can ask the player for their input, look up real monster stats from the Dungeons and Dragons API itself. We can also look up spells, and then we can also do a roll of a dice with some randomness. And so we're going to be using basically real data, and we're not going to be making stuff up. The only thing we're going to be using the model for is to kind of use a little bit of imagination and move the game along. We're also going to be able to see the model reason in real time using streaming, so we can see its chain of thought reasoning. So let's get into the code, and we're going to jump into just a single main.go, and I'll walk you through every piece. So first, a model URL, it's going to point to the Qwen 3 8 billion parameter model, and it's going to be downloaded automatically by Kronk from Hugging Face. The system prompt will set up our wizard, level 5. It's got 32 hit points. Hit points is the health of our character. We've got an armor level or class of 12, and that's how hard you can hit the wizard. And then he has different spells he can cast: Fireball, Shield, Misty Step, and Magic Missile. You don't really need to know Dungeons and Dragons to follow along, but just think of it as the character description of our character in this particular game. The prompt is deliberately minimal, and the real guidance is going to come from the tools that we provide later on, and I'll show you those in a moment. Here are all the imports we're going to be using: the standard library imports plus 3 external packages: Fantasy, Kronk, and Go.env, and that's going to be it. Next, we're going to create a standard in channel, and the only purpose of this is so we can handle things like Ctrl+C to exit out of the game, and also allow the user to enter input. So when we're reading for or waiting for user input, it doesn't block. So before I had this, if we were running the ask user tool and I decided I wanted to quit while it's waiting for my response, Ctrl+C wouldn't work. So we have a way to handle both regular text, and we also have a way to handle Ctrl+C. So in our run function, that's going to be the meat and potatoes of our agent. First thing we're going to do is listen for Ctrl+C. Next, we're going to set up our provider, which is going to be the Kronk provider. Then we're going to set up our model config. This Q80 KV cache quantization thing basically cuts our VRAM in half, basically allows us to run the model with less memory. Next, we set up the model to close when the function ends or the program exits, so we clean everything up nicely. And then we load the model. So the first run is going to download the model automatically, like I mentioned before. And then we set this 1.5 presence penalty. Next, we create a new agent using the fantasy library. We set the system prompt. We add the tools that we haven't created yet. We set max output tokens, a temperature, and then this presence penalty is a Qwen 3 specific recommendation. And basically it helps the model not spit out a bunch of repetitive nonsense. Here you can visualize how everything's going to work. So here's one game turn. The agent is going to stream output from the Kronk provider. It's going to get some reasoning tokens and some normal output tokens, and maybe some tool calls. Or if there's some monster involved, say an owlbear, for an example, a classic D&D monster, we can look that up using the API tool that we create, and it's going to get back some stats on this monster. It might roll some dice to see what happens next, because the dice has an effect on what different characters and scenarios do in Dungeons and Dragons. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but that's how I understand it. And then depending on what happens, it will ask the player what they want to do next. And then we start over again. So here's what the game loop looks like. We have to keep track of history because LLMs don't actually keep track of history themselves. We've got to keep track of it ourselves. The fantasy library doesn't do it either. So we create an array called history, and this is where we're going to keep all of the messages in our conversation. And then every time we call the model, we use the streaming method or the stream method, and then we send an agent stream call. And that's going to contain our prompt, any history, and then any callbacks that we define. And we will show those callbacks a little bit later. Continuing along, we check for any Ctrl+Cs. Otherwise, we continue, accumulate messages in our history array, and then continue with the game. Now here's where we define some of the tools that the agent is going to use. Tools are simply a struct defined in the fantasy library. So we can use this new agent tool that gives the tool a name, a description, and then a function that actually runs the tool. So right here we have a player tool, a monster tool, spell tool, and a dice tool. Now what a lot of people don't realize is that the descriptions of the tools themselves actually act as prompt elements for the LLM. So they get injected into the system prompt of the agent, and the better description you give for each tool, the better the agent is able to understand and make decisions on whether or not to use a tool. For every tool, you define a struct for its input, and then you give it some types and some description tags. And using these tags, Fantasy is able to generate JSON schema that is sent to the model in order to give the model some prompting for how to call these different tools. So you don't need to generate any specific schema definitions yourself. This is all generated for you by the Fantasy library. So we have it as player input with questions, some options, and then we define the actual function that returns any result from the tool. And here's the code that handles the choice from the player 1 through whatever. And if they don't actually choose a number, we show an error and have them choose again. Here's the roll dice tool, has the same pattern. You define a struct with the parameters. You give it some descriptions. Now, I mentioned before, I'm not a Dungeons and Dragons expert, but I know in the game you roll all kinds of different sided die with a bunch of different numbers. But just in case you're curious, this dice notation, for example, 2d6 plus 5, all that means is that you roll 2 dice. Each dice has 6 sides, and then you add 5 to it. So another example, 1d20 just means 1 20-sided die. When I originally created the demo for this video, I wanted to allow the model to just pass in different dice with different notation, but I kept having issues with the model hallucinating notation, adding extra characters, blah, blah, blah. So instead I created a struct for it. So I gave it a count, sides, and then a modifier. And that seemed to help it. So here we have a lookup monster tool, and all that does is take a monster name, slugify it, and then look up using the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition API. So for example, if the dungeon master summons an owlbear or a goblin, it'll look up owlbear or goblin from the actual rulebook of the game. And then the API is just going to return some stats about the monster. Don't worry if you don't understand any of the acronyms. They just stand for things like strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, a lot of different descriptors for monsters and characters in the game. And for the lookup spell, it's basically the same pattern using the same API. You'll get back a bunch of different stats about the spell, how effective the spell is, what the spell is supposed to do, how it changes depending on the level of the character, etc. Also notice there's a stat called school there. I had no idea what that was. I had to look it up. Basically, that means school of magic, which is just a category of magic. You don't need to worry about that either. Now that we have the tools, we need to handle the streaming from the model. Now, if you've used something like ChatGPT, Anthropic Claude in like a web view, you notice whenever they answer something, the text is kind of given to you piece by piece in a streaming fashion. This is kind of a way to help you not get distracted or bored while you're waiting for a response from the model. You get everything back incrementally so you can kind of understand that something's actually happening, the model's actually working. And to handle that, we have these different callbacks. And so we have different callbacks for reasoning text and callbacks for normal text. So when reasoning starts, we have this on reasoning start callback, on reasoning delta. Delta is just a fancy word for change or difference. So whenever we see new text added on to the thinking text, we can handle that. And then we have on reasoning end. So when we actually run this, and when I show you the demo, we can actually see the thinking, the model thinking. It's going to be enclosed in this thinking bracket and then an end thinking. So all of the thinking tokens will be enclosed in that. And then we have on normal, on text delta, which is just the normal text, the final response that the model spits out. And then literally all we do when we receive this is just print out the text, append it to the previous text, and that's it. That's how easy it is. And then we have callbacks for tool calls and tool results. You filter out as player from the tool call and result logs because the tool handles its own display. For everything else, the monster lookups, dice rolls, spell lookups, all that stuff, we just print out, hey, that it's calling this tool, and then we just print out the result. And then finally, we just add a few different helpers. So format AC is just formatting the armor class, format the speed, and then we format the school, like the different school of magic, etc. So here I am in my terminal, and I'm just going to run the code with go run dot. And as you can see, it's downloading all of the libraries. I have an NVIDIA RTX 4070 on this machine. It also downloads the model, but I've already run this before. It downloaded the model already, so I didn't have to suffer through that. When you run it the first time, you're going to see it do that. And then it kind of kicks off everything right away. You can see these thinking tokens. Okay, the player is a level 5 wizard, and then the end thinking, and then you get the actual response from the model. The dungeon entrance looms ahead, stone walls damp with moss. A flickering torch reveals a gnarled door slightly ajar, with a faint sound of dripping water echoing from within. What do you do? So this is all running locally on my machine right now on my NVIDIA card, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to choose 3, Misty Step to scout the interior. I don't know what that is, but let's see what it does. You can see the model thinking. It says I vanish in a swirl of mist, reappearing in the doorway. I see faint footprints in the darkness. What do I do now? Let's investigate the footprints. More thinking. Sometimes it thinks a lot and it gets kind of annoying. You could probably tone this down a bit by reducing the number of output tokens. Still thinking. All right, let's just try and cast Magic Missile. It's going to think about it. I'm hoping it actually does a tool call. Still thinking. So I guess because there was no enemy, it didn't do a tool call and it didn't look up Magic Missile. So I don't know, search for hidden enemies. It's going to think about it. Ah, it found a skeleton. And because it wanted to understand what a skeleton does, it did a lookup for the skeleton. It's thinking some more. And now that I have someone to attack, let's go ahead and attack. So it looks like it's thinking about rolling a dice. Yes, it rolled the dice. A lot of thinking. So apparently my dice roll was really bad, and so I missed, but we'll stop it there for now. So that's it. That's how you create a purely local AI agent running a model on your own hardware using Go. Now, to sum this all up, Pure Go FFI was the breakthrough that made all of this possible, and we used Fantasy, Kronk, and Yzma to build on top of that to give us a complete local AI stack. The great thing about Fantasy is that it's provider agnostic, so you can swap out backends whenever you want. So you can start out local in development, and if you want to switch to something like OpenAI or Anthropic, you can totally do that in just a few lines of code. And because we're building in Go, you can build everything into one single binary that you can easily ship. No extra runtime, no virtual environment, none of that. I'll be sure to leave the full source in the description, so be sure to check that out. So let me know what you think. Would you be willing to use Go over Python for doing local AI development? If so, what kind of things would you like to build? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you have something to say or you have any questions, leave those in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.